I'm delighted to have our next presenter with us. He is the Dean of the College of Communication and Information Sciences, and he does a session that's on a topic that, again, most new teachers don't get much information on, and that's why he has come here and why he has kindly agreed to be involved in this workshop year after year after year. The topic that he is going to be talking about is leading group discussions, and so I'm pleased to introduce to you the Dean of the College of Communication and Information Sciences, Dr. Mark Nelson.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and I want to say congratulations to each of you and welcome to the University of Alabama. We are so glad you are here. One of the great things about being part of a research institute is to have great GAs and GTAs who help us in the classroom and who often inspire our teachers beyond the regular faculty members. So thank you for what you are about to contribute to the mission of our institution. As Dr. Schmidt explained to you, I am going to be talking with you about leading group discussions. Expert from the College of Communication. And I am trying to move the cursor here to the next page, which isn't working quite right. Gotcha. Let me do that instead. Oh, thank you. That is not where to start. Here we go. As I said, you are the brightest and often do better than those of us who have been here for many, many years. I'd like to show you a fine example of leading classroom discussions before we get started here. So if you will, indulge me.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone? The tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which anyone raised or lowered? Raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression. Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone? Anyone seen this before? The Laffer curve. Anyone know what this says? It says that at this point on the revenue curve, you will get exactly the same amount of revenue as at this point. This is very controversial. Does anyone know what Vice President Bush called this in 1980? Anyone? Something DOO economics. Voodoo economics.
So how many of you have participated in group discussions that sort of ended up like that, or tried to lead them that ended up like that? Well, we want to help you avoid that. Of course, that's not the ideal, that's not what you want, but sometimes that's what you get. People looking at you like they want to kill you. And I promise you they don't want to kill you, but sometimes it does feel that way. So today we're going to cover a few topics that I think will help you out as you attempt to lead these group discussions in your classroom. First, we'll be talking about some of the preliminaries. Then we're going to talk about some of the dangers. I'm not talking about those who want to kill you. Then we'll talk about two methods that I think you can employ in almost any classroom or lab to help facilitate group discussion among your students. And then we'll end with some tips and techniques, killers and igniters, again, not talking about those in the classroom. So to get you started, I want to help you understand why it is important to have group discussions. You know, some of the times I've heard faculty members say, I say, what are you about to do in the classroom? Oh, I'm going to give a lecture. As if it's an inoculation, and either it takes or it doesn't take. I'm going to give them a lecture, and then they should know everything. So I want you to understand why group participation or classroom participation is vitally important to your instruction here at the university and beyond. I'm going to flash on the screen a series of words, simple words. They'll be posted there for about 15 seconds. 12 words, 15 seconds. I want you to try to remember as many of these words as you can, okay? The order is not important. I'm not looking for you to get them in the right order. I want you to remember as many of these words as you can. And again, there are 12. I will give you 15 seconds. Are you ready? No pencils, please, at this point. Pencils down. And begin. Okay, you've had 15 seconds to remember 12 easy, simple words. Now what I want you to do is try to write down as many of those words as you can. Write down as many of those words as you can. Your goal is 12. Some of you have stopped at 3 and you're laughing. 12 words, the order's not important. Now, if you're stuck, here's what I want you to do. This will help your memory and probably help you in exams later as well. I don't want you to think about the exact word, but I want you to look at your list and I want you to, in your mind, say each word without thinking, say each word and then add one more word. You will be able to do it. Say the words in your head and then add one more word. Try it. Okay, count your words. Count your words. No collaborating on this exercise. Count your words. How many of you got 12 words or more? 12 or more? Do I see any hand? The blue shirt, did you get 12 or more? Send him a gift, if you will. So we've given you a book. You got 12 or more words. You get a prize. You can just send it on over there. Pass it through the crowd. Okay, how many of you got 11 words or more? Don't have enough gifts for you, sorry. 10 or more. 10 or... Okay, who got 2 or more words? I want see, everybody gets to raise their hand in my class. That's wonderful. Great. Well, I know that some of you got almost every word on the list. I know also that many of you put a word on your list that was not on my list. And I know more than that. I know the word that the majority of you put on your list that was not on my list. And that word is sleep. How many of you put sleep on your list? Look around. What? Thank you. I am Bert Wonderstone. And sleep does not exist anywhere on my list. And yet almost all of you put sleep on your list. Why did you do that? The words are related to sleep. Yes, that's right. Some of you probably put it early on. Some of you put it near the middle. Some of you put it after I said add one more word. Tricky in that sense. But most of you put it on your list because it's related to it. This explains something very important that you'll want to carry with you, and that is that memory for speech, and to a certain degree visual memory, as you have just proven, memory for speech, and to a certain degree visual memory, is not simply reproductive. You don't reproduce exactly what you hear or see. Memory for speech is reconstructive. So you reconstruct it. What happens when you take something apart and try to reconstruct it? Have you done that before? Too many parts? Parts left over? Not enough parts? It doesn't look quite right when you try to do that? That's what happens in your classrooms, and that's why it's so important for us to consider group discussion and discussions in our classroom, because it sort of seals it in a concrete way and in a more accurate way for the learners in your classroom. You see, the students will swear that you said something in your classroom that you did not say. Count on that, rely on it, maybe a little bit. But I've often had faculty members, say, did you tell them in that? No, I did not tell them that. But that is what they heard, and they would almost swear that that's what they heard as well. Let me give you an illustration. For several years, over a decade, I taught a large lecture class here at the university. And one of the things that we would cover in that class in principles of communication was eye contact. You know, the principles of eye contact and so forth. And so I'm explaining to the class one day the fact that, in general, men make less eye contact than women while speaking and listening. In general. Doesn't mean all men, doesn't mean all women are great at eye contact. But in general, we make less eye contact while speaking and listening. So I gave them this example. Many years ago, when I was engaged and about to get married, we were going to the little parties you have before you get married. And one of them was a barbecue hosted by an old friend of my wife's family. And so I wanted to make a good impression on this elderly gentleman. So I walk up to him at the barbecue and I start talking to him. He asks me a question and I start to answer, and then he just kind of looks away. And so I start talking like this. I think I'm not making a good... He asks me another question, I start to answer, and he kind of drifts off, looking away and so forth. And I walk away from that interaction thinking I didn't make a very good impression on this man. But then I watched my brother-in-law, who had a good relationship with this man, and he did the same thing to him. So I realized, oh, of course, he's just not comfortable making eye contact when you're talking with him. I read that as what? He wasn't interested, disinterest in my conversation. So I used that example in class about men and differences in men and women. Here's what I got on the exam one year. As men get older, they won't look at you when you are talking to them, especially at barbecues. No joke. Several people. Welcome to the University of Alabama, the home of higher education. So we had to do a little, after the exam, I said, let me be clear about something. You know, as we get older, it's not that at all. So people take away different things, and that's why it's so important that we engage in this kind of exercise. But before doing it, it's important to understand some preliminaries. You can't just go in and say, I'm going to have a group discussion in class. It won't work that way. You have to put in a lot of homework on the front end. Sort of like the difference between multiple choice exams and essay exams. Multiple choice, the hard work on the teacher is up front, writing a good question. Essay exams, the hard work's on the end, grading all of those essays. A few preliminaries. Number one, teachers must create a norm early in the term that students must read the material prior to the day that it is discussed in the classroom or the lab. One of my TAs once was so proud, came to me and said, I'm so happy my class told me they don't even have to read the book. I'm so good at going over it in class. That's not what you're supposed to be doing in class, you know, just being a professional reader to the class, not at all. Number two, lectures and or lab sessions traditionally must expand upon the material in the text or on the text. So you have an understanding that they have a base of knowledge. How are you going to take them further with that knowledge? And number three, teachers must examine the reading material carefully and select concepts which need elaboration or additional concepts for the unit of study at hand. So keep these concepts in mind about your teaching, and then beware of these dangers as you go in to lead group discussions. Number one, about 1/3 of the students will make most of the comments. That's pretty dangerous. That means that only 1/3 of your students are going to get that full comprehension that you're striving for. Number two, students from some cultures have normative rules against speaking out in large groups. So we're going to have to find a way to address that as well. It may be as simple as you going up to some students and saying from traditionally Hispanic or Asian cultures and asking them, in the next class period, I'd like for you to give me an example of blank. I'm going to ask for an example. So you kind of set them up for success while they get acclimated to your classroom. And then number three, most teachers have an unconscious preference for whom they call on in classrooms. How dangerous is this? We know that only 1/3 are going to speak up. Some of them have normative rules against speaking up, and then I have a preference for who I'm going to call on. This can set up for disaster, especially if you're going to rely on group discussion in your classroom. So let's talk about two concepts two techniques, if you will, that can help you have greater success. Now, the first one I've just flashed on the screen, and I flashed it on there and then started looking around the room, because usually what I get when people hear the words brainstorming is, brainstorming, I know brainstorming. Can't believe we're going to waste time going over brainstorming. Okay? I thought students in communication for sure knew brainstorming, right? Some of our junior and senior students who are supposed to be educated on these types of techniques. So I was working with a group of our students once, and I said, let's brainstorm a name for this project we're going to work on for the community. Oh, yes, brainstorm. I love it. Yes, we brainstorm in our class. That sounds great. Let's get going. Okay. One student said, I know, let's call it feedback. Great, I love it. Okay, got it. That was brainstorm. That was the end of the session. I'm like, that's not brainstorming. Brainstorming, if done correctly, can improve the creativity and problem solving from 30 to 300%. But the problem is, most of us don't know how to go about it. Brainstorming allows the group to generate and discuss a variety of ideas and perspectives without prematurely evaluating them. It encourages creativity and equal participation if done correctly. If done correctly. So here's some of the approach. Now, I know you can read the approach. I attended a teaching workshop once. And the facilitator of the workshop had all of the bells and whistles. And this was a workshop on how to improve the critical thinking skills of students. How to improve critical thinking skills of students. And he said, we're going to begin by brainstorming. So we had all of these colored note cards and wonderful pens. And he said, I'm going to give you 1 minute, and I want you to brainstorm how you can improve the critical thinking skills of your students. And I thought, oh no. No. I hope he knows what he's doing, because that is not the way you would brainstorm this type of question. If it were as easy as brainstorming ideas to improve critical thinking skills, we could have it done like that. Well, we had a minute, we started writing things down, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do some freewheeling. Creative, wild ideas, because I know they're encouraged. So we all write down our ideas. One person says, he goes, okay, time's up. What was your idea? And she says, I think we ought to give more essay exams. He writes on the board, he says, excellent. More essay exams. Now, he said excellent. What did he do? Evaluated it. Excellent. More essay exams. Well, that's a pretty easy solution. You know, we're not going to get there if that's the way we're thinking. He asked someone, and what do you think we should do? And he says, I think we should have more in-class writing assignments. Great idea. More in-class writing assignments. He points to me and he says, what's your idea? I said, I think we should have them stand up and walk around and pretend to be critical thinkers. Next person, what's your idea? Didn't write it down or anything. I was like, okay, I know what we're doing now. You know, so at the end of that day-long session, we were giving students more essay exams, having them do more writing assignments in the class, and so forth like that. Didn't get to the heart of what I thought was, how do we get to critical thinking in this? We know we can give more assignments and so forth, but how do we get to the heart of it? So I really think, now that I think about it a little more, if we had had them stand up and walk around and pretend to be critical, we could get somewhere with that idea. You know, if we would continue to piggyback off of it, we might be able to get somewhere with that idea. So here are the things. Impose a time limit. You're looking for quantity, not quality. Quantity of ideas. But he used one technique of brainstorming, and that was the direct approach. Direct answers you were trying to write down, when he probably should have used the indirect approach. We're going to do both today, okay? We're going to do both. So, I want us to engage in brainstorming for 1 minute. For 1 minute, I want us to engage in brainstorming. I'm going to reward, with my stack of gifts up here, I'm going to reward the wildest, craziest idea. So, and the quantity, the one who has the most ideas, because that's what we're looking for here. So we're going to use the direct method on this brainstorming first. Why do students not speak up in discussion sessions in class? That's your topic. That's what I want you to brainstorm. Why do they not participate in group discussions? You have 1 minute. Write down as many ideas as you can get. Go. Fast. Write as fast as you can. Why do students not speak up? Wild, crazy. Ideas are encouraged. Five seconds. Keep writing faster. You might get a free t-shirt. Okay, stop. Pens down. So count your words. Stop. Count your words. This is like Master Chef. Put your pencils down. Okay. How many of you got 15 or more items? 15? Why did you put your hand back down? 14? 13? You don't want a t-shirt? How many got 12? 13. 13 is the highest in the back. Send a book back to her. Thank you. Okay, let's hear your ideas. I'm going to put them up here. Why do they not participate in group discussions? Go. Lightning. They have to stand on their heads. What, you all are crazy. What?
They had their tongues removed by pirates.
Tongue removed by pirates. They're high? Is that what you said? I need to see you after class. Okay? Can't find their voice?
Afraid of second puberty.
They're what? Wrong class. It's going to happen. Lucky underwear. What? Help me. Save energy. Sleep.
They hate their outfit.
Hate clothes. Brush teeth. Government listening. Got news for you. Fear. Peanut butter. Didn't do the reading. Cat ate it. What else? What? Oh, texting.
Afraid they'll swallow a fly.
Missing vocal cords. They're not there. Good reason. They're cute? Oh, mute? Research shows cuter people speak more often. To what? Professors. Well, thank you. Anything else? Okay, so we've got some good reasons here. We could then, as a group, we would then begin to evaluate them. We might say, okay, well, we know they're not high. Pirates don't live near here. But, what is it about the reading? Come to this, I am, but, so save energy. What about these kinds of things? So, easy to begin to generate. And notice what happens. You kind of get comfortable speaking out in class. So the direct method has a purpose. It might help them begin to get comfortable. It's a sort of a question that we can easily find answers to and then begin to solve a problem with. So that's one way that we might go about this. But let's see how we might use the second method of brainstorming within another method called reflective thinking. So the reflective thinking model is a logical step-by-step process for discussion that is especially well suited for problem solving. It's systematic. It keeps discussions on track. How many of you were like me sometimes? I'm going to say, let's see if we can get the professor off track today. Yes, okay, we lost 30 minutes there. Guards against the tendency to prematurely end a discussion without thoroughly exploring the issue. Again, sometimes group discussions don't seem to go anywhere, do they? So you want to make sure that if you have one, that it goes somewhere, that it seems worthwhile. I've heard students say, all we do is talk in that class, and we don't seem to get anywhere either. So let's see how we might go about doing that. Well, first we're going to define the problem or issue. As a class, we can define the problem, and that is, how do we, today as what we're talking about, how do we improve or increase student participation in group discussions? How do we increase student participation in group discussions? That's what we're talking about here today. That's the problem we're going to explore. So let's first analyze the problem. And when we talk about analyzing the problem, we're talking about some of the causes. So what we just did was brainstorm causes. Now, we don't have a lot of logical causes up there. I'm judging them now. We don't have a lot of logical, but in a traditional brainstorming, we probably would get some. We had one, didn't read the textbook, didn't read the material for today. What are some things we can do about that? One problem we addressed in communication studies was the fact that why is it that the grades in 8 a.m. classes of public speaking seem to be worse than the grades at other times during the day? You know, we found out what, we thought we might find out, but we had to brainstorm some of this. They're basically asleep. Couldn't perform at 8 a.m. in the classroom. So we first look at the causes, and then we might look at the ramifications. Now that we've got the causes, let's together, and you all now have experience speaking up in class. I'm treating you like a class now. What might be some of the ramifications if we don't increase the participation in group discussion? What might be some of those ramifications? Learning curve drops. It limits the ideas and opinions in the classroom. What? Awkward silence could occur. Bad for you, the teacher. It's boring. Even more dangerous, students develop the habit of not speaking up in the classroom. Even beyond that, they develop that habit in college. It extends into life. And then they don't speak up on issues, community issues, issues at work, and so forth. So the ramifications can be great. Do you see what you're doing here? You are involving the class in solving a problem, but you're also setting up the exigency for the problem. We have identified some root causes. We have identified grave ramifications. Now people are in the mindset that, well, we probably need to do something about it. So they're going to be more likely to participate if we lead the discussion in this way. But before we get to generating solutions, and your class is going to be eager to generate solutions, we need to set up the criteria for judging those solutions. Why do you think we need to do that first? Why do we need to do that first, before we generate solutions? Yes, we do all of those things so they understand why it's important and they should care about it, if I heard you correctly.
You don't want to discourage somebody from participating.
You don't want to discourage them from participating because you always, it seems like, disregard their what? Solution or idea. So it's not the teacher then or the class who's always against them. We're setting up together the criteria for judging solutions before we even do them. So you can't come back and say, well, you never picked my idea in class. Well, we're going to judge them based on the criteria we all agreed upon. Now, we could do some direct brainstorming here as well. Just as causes, ramifications, and criteria for solutions, we could do direct brainstorming like we just did to get those. So what might be some of the solutions we want to implement for you? Not solutions, but criteria for judging the solutions. We're going to leave here with some ideas. So how will you judge those ideas? What are some criteria? It should be very practical, may be applicable to both classroom and lab. It should be relevant, something that relates well. Relatively easy to implement, yes. Fast in the time period of a class, right? Do you have a lot of money to spend on things for the classroom? Generally not. It should be low cost. What? Cost effective. Potentially something you can adjust, tweak for your classroom. So we've got a whole lot of criteria there that we're going to use to judge these things. It should reduce fear, right? It should increase what? What are we trying to do? Participation. Some basic criteria that we need to come up with. So we get everyone involved in this discussion and agreement on these. We may even strike some out as we get them on the board. Now we've got the causes. We understand the grave ramifications. Now we know how we're going to judge solutions. Now the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to brainstorm solutions. Now if I were to say to you, like the facilitator said to us, how do you increase critical thinking? If I said, how can you increase participation in group discussions in your classroom, you might sit there for a minute, I don't know, right? You know something. You'd be stymied, you'd be stuck for a moment. So we're going to use the indirect method. And if if you create this safe environment in your classroom, and if you create one that uses this model, students are going to know, just like professional organizations that use this, the time is not wasted, even though it may seem a little silly at first. So what we are going to do first, I'm going to ask you to brainstorm indirect method. I want you to think of everything that comes to your mind when you hear the word yellow. You have 1 minute. We're going to reward the most and the craziest. So everything that comes to your mind when you hear the word yellow, write it down. You have 1 minute. Go. Okay, stop. Count your words. So who got 20 or more? 21. 22. Okay, the woman in the back gets a gift. Send it back to her. Raise your hand high so he can see you. Didn't know you were going to run all over the place. Sorry. Okay, so let's hear what came to your mind when you heard the word yellow. Fear. Beyonce. Sobering. What? Bigfoot? Oh, Big Bird. We're in the South. Bird. What? Coldplay? Got fear. Sunflower? Beer? You're mellow. Journalism. Yellow journalism. What? Submarine. Pineapple. Post-it. Office. Jaundice. I was wondering what that had to do with it.
The yellow sign of the old ones.
What?
The yellow sign of the old ones.
Of the old ones?
H.P. Lovecraft.
Sure. Whatever you say. School bus. General Patton, ... Yellow brick road. Belly. Teeth. Lightning. I have that. No. Lightning. Huh. Hammer. Roll Tide. What? Simpson. Simpsons? Anything else you'd like to contribute? Snow. Anything else? Buttercup. Perhaps you will not think common now. Wood. What about the sunflower? Sounds good. So which one of these do you think is just the craziest? Which one shall we reward? General Patton? Sunflower? I don't think she can read it, but I don't know. How old is she? That's a good one. That's a good one. Yes. Okay, sunflower gets the present. Very good. But I'm going to choose another one for us to do the indirect method to continue with. Now, I'm going to give you 1 minute, and I want you to think of ways that you can increase participation in group discussion by using a Post-it note. How can you increase participation in group discussion by using a Post-it note? 1 minute, go. 5 seconds. Notice sometimes when you give that warning, people just give up. Oh, 5 seconds. It's not possible. Okay, stop. Pencils down. Now, in your class, in order to encourage students who might be shy about speaking up, a technique that you can add to this is sort of the pair and share approach. So after they have brainstormed, you can ask them to pair or get in groups of 3 or something like that and share their ideas and try to piggyback off those ideas to create one great idea that's presented by the group. Do you understand? And it doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take a lot of time at all. So I'm going to ask you in 1 minute, share one idea and try to improve it with someone next to you. You have 1 minute. Go. All righty, time's up. Time's up. Let's hear from one of the groups. Who thinks they have a good idea that we could implement? Right here. A drinking game. So you're getting high and you're drinking. Okay.
So we got a Post-it note, and we're going to write a test question on the Post-it note and put it on the forehead. And they have to find the answer to their question, or their question to their answer.
Right.
And then the two have to group together and they pair
Find themselves together.
find the answer to the question and the question to their answer. See if they got it.
Excellent. I think we could adjust that. We could tweak that for whatever situation we're in. We got one back here. Yes. Hello. Is that Andrea? Alexandria, yes. Nice to see you. That's why you said Beyonce.
For people to write on the Post-it note the thing that they've done that they're most ashamed of in life, and then to anonymously stick it on the board and then no judgment.
Okay. Very good. Tricky. Tricky. Who has another? Who has another? Yes, right here in front.
We said it was something that needed to be put in a logical order, give everybody on their desk thing, and then have them all talk to each other to figure out what logical order they need.
Oh, yeah, especially trying to find the solution to a sequence or something like that. Very good. What?
We discussed if you're talking about different prompts in class, you can split up into groups and have one group put their prompt on their forehead, have the other group scheme together, have to describe that prompt to that group's idea.
Absolutely. Do you see how if we collect all of these ideas, we can have some great ideas, then we can judge those ideas based on the criteria we set up and try to implement them then. So it's not just taking one, and we could make them better as we talk about them. I'm sure as people were describing their ideas, you were thinking, yeah, but you could also do this and so forth. So we kind of get into that problem-solving mode, if you will. Well, after we would list all of these on the board, for example, then we would, that's generating our potential solutions, then we would select the best solution and go through with it. This can be used not just in brainstorming, but in true problem solving in your various disciplines as well, in true problem solving areas. But there are some things that you need to consider. Tips and techniques, if you will. You do need to, on occasion, ask some closed-ended questions to check for comprehension. Very important. Very quick you can do this as well, asking those closed-ended questions. Second, ask open-ended questions to foster further discussion. And remember, if you're using the brainstorming technique, or the reflective thinking model rather, you need to pose that question as an open-ended question. If I had started this with, do we need to increase the participation in group discussions in our class? Yes, class dismissed. You see, so you need to make it in a way that it allows for critical thinking and discussion. Avoid patterns of unintended disconfirmation of students, like wrong answer. I'll give you an example. During my PhD work, I had a professor who asked us a question. One student tried to answer, another student answered, then I thought I would try to answer. The teacher stood there and she went, almost right, on the right track, pointed at me and said, definitely wrong. And so I did not speak up again in the class. It was hard to speak up again in the class. Ask questions that may have many possible answers. We get a lot of top-notch undergraduates at this institution. You know, more national merit scholars study here than anywhere else. They're great at getting the right answer, and they want to get the right answer. But sometimes you ask some questions that offers many possible answers. Reinforce the contribution even of a student, even if it's not exactly what you were looking for. Doesn't mean you never tell someone they're off base, but reinforce that contribution, keep it flowing, and ask for additional comments. A few more tips. Let silence develop. The research indicates that most teachers are uncomfortable with silence, and so they will answer their own question before students have had an opportunity to build up the courage to say something. So be comfortable with the silence. Let it build up, if you will. Remember, why questions elicit defensiveness. Why did you say that? Well, because I thought it was the right answer. You know? So rather ask them to explain how they got to that. It's much less confrontational. You have to prepare well in advance for these kinds of things. They don't happen organically. The ones that look organic have had the most preparation behind them. Be prepared. Take notes on your successes and failures. Next time I would do this, and do it immediately after class. One of the most helpful tips I received as a new teacher, writing comments to yourself after each class of what you would do a little differently. And assess your skill by videotaping, which this session will do for you as well. Keep in mind there are a few killers and a few igniters. Things like phrases, that will never work, that's crazy, no, that's not what I'm talking about. But there are some things that will ignite discussion. No, everyone loves to hear, great idea, I agree, you're on the right track, I never thought of that, really good. Anyone else? So a few things that you can do. And to sort of summarize why we do this, I want to administer one last exam for you. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I want you to respond aloud, if you will. There's a president, just to see how well you're listening and engaged in this session. There's a president's name that rhymes with folk. What is it? I want everyone to say polk as loudly as you can 3 times out loud. Now, loud. Ready? And polk, polk, polk. What do you call the white of an egg? No. The white of an egg is called the white. The brightest, best GAs from the country. Now let's try one more time. Cowboys built structures to defend themselves against the enemies. What were these structures called? Forts. Everyone say fort loudly now 3 times, and fort, fort, fort. What do you eat soup with? Ah, now you're listening. So one more for good measure. A forest is composed of what? Trees. Everyone say tree loudly with me 3 times, and tree, tree, tree. How many of each animal did Noah carry on the ark? Moses carry on the ark? I missed us. Well, you would have said 2, and I would have said no. Moses didn't carry any animals on the ark. Noah did. Students sometimes think they know what they're listening for, so they stop listening. You think you know what you're listening for, and I sort of set you up for that so that you would know what you were listening for, but it was something totally different. Group discussions allow the opportunity to set the information in concrete, if you will, and to assure correct understanding of the material. I hope you'll find some value in some of these techniques. Thank you. You've been a great audience, and you get 2 books.